And isn't it better for a child to be with their parents? And what's
Yes,
our obligation to our communities to make certain mom and dad are in the picture?
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, when you look at it, too, we have a lot of functioning drug addicts who are not considered drug addicts. You have so many people on antidepressants at this point. That I think, what did I read? Something like 40%.
Oh, it's huge.
Yeah. So, you know, when you look at that, by definition, they're drugs. Yep. You have to take it every day. That is being addicted. That is a drug addict. So I think we need to change our viewpoint and our perspective on exactly what a drug addict is and stop labeling it with that horrible connotation that we have, that if you are, quote unquote, a drug addict, that you are a deviant person. There are addicts in every class of social plateau. If you know what I mean.
Absolutely. And you know what's interesting, Jen? You mentioned two things: labeling and deviance. And what's interesting is if you really start going down and you start talking about labeling, well, that's exactly what we did with drugs. We labeled it a moral issue. It initially started out we were labeling drugs through racism. Mm-hmm. And then once society wasn't allowed to label drugs as racism, and Nixon did this quite clearly, is he linked the marijuana user to the heroin addict and to the fear of crime back in the 60s in order to get elected, and then initiated the war on drugs. It was a moral issue. So all of a sudden, you know, and I'm not a theologian, but I think some of the biggest pushback that we get is from socially conservative, not only Republicans, but Democrats.
Sure,
you know,
absolutely.
And so, you know, this is a moral issue, and, you know, darn it, is you can't allow people to use drugs, and you have to punish them. And I always have to stand up in front of people and say, look, you know, drugs, no different than a gun, is an inanimate object.
Right.
You have to deal with the behavior. If a drug addict uses a gun to kill someone to get drugs, you deal with that. But why would we endanger the public instead of making certain that this drug addict was treated in a medical fashion so they wouldn't have to go out and commit a crime in order to get their drugs? So it's that vicious circle.
And I think that there would be such a benefit to legalization. And I'll share with you as well that my concern has always been marijuana. So, and this stems from, I think we went over this before, that how I got into the war on drugs and taking the position that I have in the war on drugs was I watched Rick Simpson's video run.
Well, but it's the lack of scientific study, or it's not the lack of scientific study. What Rick Simpson shows is that there's a scientific basis for the efficacy of cannabis, because I hate the term marijuana, quite frankly. Yeah, I like cannabis because marijuana, again, is that labeling deviance, okay? Mm-hmm. It's cannabis because there's industrial and there's whether it's a social or a medical. And one of the things that happens is what people don't understand is the DEA and NIDA, the National Institutions for Drug Abuse, do not allow scientific research on the medical efficacy of marijuana. And in fact, the NIDA spokesperson has been quoted as saying that. So again, our government continues to perpetuate an act of omission. You know, shouldn't our tax dollars be to finding the truth? You know, it's kind of like the Machiavellian versus the Socrates model of government. Yeah. And so the DEA and the drug czar and law enforcement are engaged in Machiavellian tactics to consolidate power, where I view government as from Socrates' philosophy, which is we always have to have a commitment to search for the truth, no matter where that truth may lie. That's the basis of all the governor petitions for reclassification of marijuana. If only Obama would do one thing, he could declassify marijuana from a Schedule I to a Schedule II. That would open up scientific research and other monies where we could really focus. It would open up industrial hemp market. It would bring jobs to the United States, which we're sorely lacking right now.
Yeah, I say it wouldn't just bring jobs, but it would actually move the U.S. into a position of, I've said this before, being the world's providers instead of being the world's consumers.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And what people don't understand is, there is a significant industrial hemp market in the United States, but what we are doing is all the people who are producing hemp products in the United States have to get it from outside our country.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's like a $3 billion industry. It's huge.
Yes, it is. I want to backtrack. I want to move back to rescheduling cannabis.
Yeah.
Because now here is what has always gotten to me. If the government holds a patent on cannabis as a neuroprotectant and antioxidant, and that's just what they hold, the patent on it for.
Sure.
That's the one that I know about. How can they possibly keep it a Schedule I drug? Because by definition, it doesn't fit what a Schedule I drug is supposed to be.
I had this argument with one of my law enforcement friends who said that the patent is on a synthetic, and I said no, it's not, because you have to, even in order to get the synthetics, you still have to mimic, and so what it is, it's hypocritical, because again, I think if you look at the drug war, like anything else, you got to follow the money. It's always about following the money, and who has there? There's three people that are the biggest losers if marijuana gets legalized right now: politicians, who lose lobbying money, big pharma, and law enforcement.
Yeah.
Four, drug cartels.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot when you really go into it. If we were to really move to hemp-based products, it could be the oil industry that could suffer from it, because we could very easily run our cars, our homes, and anything else that we needed off of hemp ethanol, hemp fuel. So I think so many people would be affected. But if they would be wise and initiate the change to put themselves, as
the leader
in the same. Yes, exactly. They have the money to do it. They have the means to do it. It's just a matter of being stagnant at this point and not wanting to move ahead, which hurts us all in so many different ways, as a health issue, as an environmental issue, as a human rights issue. That's why I say it's everyone's fight. It affects everyone, whether they realize it or not.
And that's, you just touched on something that I think people don't understand. Instead of people viewing this as a collective battle, the drug policy reform movement is battling its own battle within itself. In California, one of the reasons why Prop 19 did not pass was because the medical marijuana community wasn't happy with it.
Yeah.
Washington right now is seeing the same thing. The medical marijuana community is up in arms over it. And so instead of looking at the big picture in that not everybody's going to get everything that they want, and whether it's an initiative, and we get I was on the 2012 ballot initiative called Regulate Marijuana Like Wine, and we couldn't get the funding, quite frankly. And we were the most responsible one. It was take the regulatory model of wine and impose it on marijuana. It makes sense. 21, it's harder for our children to get alcohol and cigarettes than it is for them to get pot or any other illicit drug.
Right.
Tax it, is treat it and understand, what, there is responsible use of cannabis. It was amazing to me when I came, when I came out of the closet, when I quit law enforcement and then started doing the work that I did, how many of my husband's friends and our friends, mutual friends, who are successful attorneys, doctors, nurses, CPAs, business owners.
Yes.
I mean, it's the complete normalization. You look at these people who all say, oh, yeah, we smoke pot.
Yes.
But we just didn't want to share that with you because we didn't know what your reaction would have been. And I started laughing because it's like, you know what, I don't care. Because in 21, almost 22 years of law enforcement, I never once went to someone's house who smoked pot, who raped their wife, beat them, molested their children, committed a robbery, got involved in a fatal traffic accident that was solely caused on marijuana. I've always believed that cannabis, marijuana, was much less dangerous than alcohol.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. And back to getting the more mainstream, responsible users to come forth is, I think, imperative. And that's why I was so impressed with LEAP, is just because they had the firsthand knowledge, and they were a very respectable group to come forth and say, this is wrong, and this is why we believe it's wrong.
Yeah.
But to see on the other side, just to see people who are enthusiasts, cannabis enthusiasts, who have done all the right things throughout their lives, who just would rather go home and smoke cannabis than drink alcohol. There are a lot of people who just do not enjoy alcohol. I think is a very legitimate argument, and I would so really love to see more people coming forward and really conveying the harmlessness of it, or at least the fact that by their experience and in their experience of what they've seen, that it might be a safer alternative.